Welcome everybody to Shop Talk put on by the Ink Kitchen. We got a panel going from all the way from the right there. We got Stahls. We got Josh from Stahls. Deric from 613. I was looking at the other one. 613. We got Nathan from FM Expressions. Joey from Hired Transfers. And Mike from Supercolor. So I'm gonna start it off with a rather simple question. DTF and transfers, full color transfers came on the market in 2020 and kind of took off really, really fast. Do you guys think the industry is gonna keep trending up, or is it kind of like gonna plateau a little bit here when it comes to using transfers? You, Mike.
Is that me?
Start and pass it down.
You didn't start off with an easy question, did you?
It wouldn't be me if I did.
Do you know the upward swing of transfers over the last sort of 3 years has basically been because it just makes life easier. People can press with cheap presses and sort of like, you don't have to buy expensive gear, you don't have to learn how to do something necessarily new, and you can create sort of like full color graphics. You don't have to screen print that stuff anymore if you're a screen printer. It just kind of makes sense. It's like the Swiss Army knife of things. It fits in with what you do, and it helps you do things better.
So like you said, in 2020, the world kind of, once this technology came out, the world kind of changed overnight. And we were like, whoa, what's this? The industry catapulted into this category that it wasn't in before. If you would have asked me on Wednesday the same question, I probably would have said that it's going to continue on that upward trajectory. I've had a lot of conversations today about, yes, it's a tool in our toolbox, but there's all these other transfer options that are also tools. So it has its use cases, but so does screen print, so does vinyl, so does all the other DTG, all the options. They're just tools in your tool belt. Sticking to one may not be it could be your best option, but it could also not be the way to go for you. Just making sure that you diversify your offerings. Your customers are going to want different options. You're going to have different garments. DTF solves so many problems, and it's easy, it's efficient, it's thoughtless, where some of the other ones aren't quite as thoughtless. I've had a lot of conversations yesterday and today with people that I don't think they're not done with DTF, but they're looking at the full scope.
Set me up for that one. Yeah, so I think DTF is actually, it's delivering on the promise that direct-to-garment made. Like in 2010, direct-to-garment was coming out, like, all right, we can make one shirt and we can have this complete inventory flexibility. We don't have to have, pre-printed stock, and just the ink system and digital print heads were not compatible with the t-shirt, right? And we fought that for a decade, and I'm a little embarrassed being in the industry this long that we didn't think of it earlier, right? Like it seems like a logical solution, like man, we should have gotten there already. And I think it's going to continue to ascend, but right now we have a little bit of a tendency to adopt, sort of like you said, it's a tool. We have a tendency to adopt the one tool as like a one-size-fits-all, right? Like, this is my hammer, it is my drill, it is my, right? It solves a problem, full color, low quantity, on demand, but the cost of goods is still relatively high. And if you think about like 70% of the t-shirts that are decorated have a one color white logo on them, right? So you don't want to pay $3 or $4 or 6 cents a square inch for a one color white logo, right? So like, there's a place for it. It opens up a ton of doors, and from my perspective, I've been trying to convince people that transfers will away for forever, and this is sort of doing it for us, so we're really excited about it.
That's exactly right. As far DTF has become the greatest poster child for transfers and has really helped us all. It's brought a much larger market to understand that transfers can solve problems that screen printing can't always do. Application in strange areas. Low MOQ, as Nate said. But with that, I feel like I have to mimic everybody else, right? It's one part of a larger tool set that you've got. So one color transfers, multi-spot transfers. You're not going to get Pantone matches on a DTF. And I'm not saying this to be negative to DTF because it is an amazing tool, and it's a, it speaks for all of our products, right? And it does introduce people. People come in and they're like, all right, what's my point of entry? So if I'm purchasing DTF, $10. So it's $10, you ship it over, you try out some shirts. Oh wow, that's great. This looks really good. How do I scale that? Well, I scale that with all the other products we offer, right? Our 4-color process screen printed transfers, our digital hybrid transfers, right? Our 1-color spot transfers.
So I agree with everything that's been said, but I am all in and I am doubling down and I'm going back to the room for more money on direct-to-film transfers. That's what I think the growth opportunity is, and there is a place for all the other transfer technologies, and there's been a place in everybody's shop, but now direct-to-film gets everybody to notice. And the reason that I love the technology is because it really perfectly aligns to e-commerce, and I think Nathan was kind of stating that, where I can print on demand, I can deliver on some of the promises of other print technologies that have been limited in scope, but with direct-to-film, I can deliver it across more product assortment, more SKUs, and whether that's through e-commerce or just through local business transactions or offline orders, it just simplifies the sales process, right? I don't have to have all these limitations and restrictions. I can just say yes to the job. And then there may be another better way to decorate it if it's a single color job and there's quantity. But I think it's really simplifying the sales process, allowing us to grow alongside e-commerce as an industry and do brand on demand.
I'm sorry, real quick. Something that you just mentioned, I think, is important to understand too. DTF doesn't solve all the problems, and specifically dye sublimated garments that bleed, high performance, things where it doesn't fit in. And then I feel like, unfortunately, because you got so many people involved on the newer levels, right? You got smaller. It's great point of entry stuff. You get in, get a DTF machine, you set up. Yes, you have to keep that running. You got to make enough shirts to make that make sense, but it doesn't solve every problem of every decoration that you need, that your customers are going to come with you. They're going to ask you for team wear. They're going to ask you for things that DTF really does not solve. So you have to have those other solutions available as well.
So you guys are
Am I allowed a response to that? Or
No, we gotta. This is about to be a back and forth. I'm all for it. But so you guys are talking to a lot of bigger shops and a lot of your customers and kind of getting feedback. Where are you seeing them use transfers to implement? What are some of the unique things that you've seen that people are finding opportunities now that weren't available before? We can get like 2 or 3 y'all. We can bounce it around and go to the next question. So I have to go down the line.
So I can lean in, since I was dying to say something else, is that performance textiles. I think that being able to go lower temp with the innovation that we've seen not only in the transfer adhesives, but on the heat presses, being able to apply more heat-sensitive fabrics in a more dependable way, being able to decorate stretch and compression fabrics and fitness and athleisure garments for sure. And so I would say that's one of the biggest opportunities that it solves for people, regardless of the material composition and the color of the garment. Being able to decorate it with the transfer, it's very quick, it's very easy.
Yeah, you hit on the athleisure point. I'd sort of double click on that. Like the performance athleisure space for transfers is like, that is the solution, especially because you're talking about a price point on a garment. In some cases, a pair of yoga pants is selling for hundreds of dollars. You don't want to run that through a screen printing shop, right? Like there's a, you can't have scorch marks, you can't, get it too hot, there's dye migration issues. So transfers really, really shine in that application for sure.
I don't know if there's any question left to answer.
So, all right, I got one for you. So, as one of the, or previously been a part of, or I don't know if you still have it, but one of the biggest embroidery decorators in New Zealand, right? No, I'm not wrong. So, where did the space come for developing and creating transfers that you've seen a way to pivot into going into shops?
So, when we started out in New Zealand, I had an embroidery business and a screen printing business. And New Zealand's a completely different market to America, but very similar. We don't have a lot of people that live in New Zealand, and it's all short run. It's 20, 30s, 40s, and in some cases 5s and 10s. And there was so much stuff that we were a contract decorator, and people would come in and say, I've got this bag, can you put a 5-color logo on it? And your options were an eco-sol transfer, you know, or a 1-color transfer, or downgrading the customer, or saying, oh, look, let's just embroider it. But you're always having to interrupt and say, no, we can't do that, we can't do that, we can't do that. We started printing transfers, and we were printing spot color transfers, and printing a 5-color spot color transfer for 20 units. How does that go, guys? It doesn't go very well.
Not so hot.
Not so hot, right? And we were doing this day in, day out, because once people had gotten a hold of these transfers, they wanted more of them. And that's where our full color transfer came from. But it basically enabled everybody that was working at the front of my shop to concentrate on selling, as opposed to having to understand how they could translate that customer's order into an order. They could just say yes. And Josh said that before. Something walks into your shop, you just say, yeah, I can brand that. And you know that you're not going to have problems branding it, and you're not going to lose money branding it, because everyone's in business to make money.
Howard, I forgot your name. But so what are you seeing, what items are you seeing decorated with transfers that possibly wouldn't have been decorated before? Like, what are some of the trending things that you've seen some of your customers do?
DTF specifically has kind of opened a venue of, I wouldn't call them hard substrates, but things that are not garments. Craft paper you can decorate on, boxes you can decorate on, cork coasters. There's all these really interesting items that we couldn't get a successful application with screen printed transfers, but these water-based DTF and digital hybrid are an option, which we didn't have before.
Anybody else want to add something?
I'll add textured fabrics, especially when you look at some of the thicker dimensional transfers that you see, whether it's a patch or a silicone or a high build product, being able to go on to textured fabrics from corduroy to Sherpa to a lot of things you see on the higher end fleece side of the business. Being able to cover that well and maintain the integrity of the graphic has been an opportunity.
Nathan, what's missing? So I think the stigma for heat presses is kind of like we can all agree that it's kind of been put to bed, is more accepted even on the end consumer standpoint. So now that that's out of the way, what's missing in this space, whether it's customer education, how the products are used, anything like that that you're noticing?
The next step is going to be speed, right? DTF is a little slow, right? And the cost of goods is still high. Right, so if you look at the price point on a DTF transfer versus what we're seeing on traditional methods, right, it does turn off the old screen printer guys. Look at that and go, hold on a second, you're $4 a print for, that seems a little high, right? That's great for one, but there's no real economy of scale with digital. So when you're doing 100, when you're doing 200, right, you don't get the benefit of the price advantage right now with DTF. I think the next step is speed, right? So that's where the hybrid solutions come in, right? And I think we're going to see that piece come to the market. And listen, there's a panel of, there's a bunch of us here. Thanks to DTF, we have like a whole new set of competitors every day joining the market. So the barrier of entry, we're a shop with 21 presses and huge investment over the years, and now 20 grand gets us a competitor, right? So the barrier of entry has gotten really, really low. I think that's good for the market, though, because we're all going to have to compete, and there's going to be pressure on us to improve our offer. So what I see over time is the cost is going to come down, the speed's going to come down, the level of service is going to go up, the cutoff times are going to be, same day, next day. We're all going to be pushed to deliver that, and because there's so many of us in the space now, if we don't, you'll find an alternative.
Is there anything in the midst of that you guys have seen in big shops that smaller shops should be thinking about to implement into what they got going on? Deric?
Technology, obviously. So we all have giant ERPs, some of them, most of them custom made, bespoke. That's not something that small shops can have, an integration. I can't speak very highly, that's not exactly my forte, but that is something as a former small shop owner that didn't exist 20 years ago. Now it's there. You can find excellent products out there to help you integrate with larger companies, to push orders through faster, to make more sense of your day and how you lay out your day. Transfers already give you those options where you don't have to set up a 17 color simulated process job. or 16 color simulated process job, you can just press a couple buttons. We do the same thing with how you order garments. If everything lands in the same place, you press it, it goes out the door. So technology on the small shop end is something I think they need to be, small shops need to be looking at, and who to partner with.
Josh, is there anything in the space right now that, like, as far as getting started with you talked a little bit about the fulfillment side of things and being able to do that. Is there challenges in the fulfillment side that you've seen that people are common issues that are coming up and getting started with it? Or what's that process look like for people?
Yeah, and it matches some of Deric's feedback. It's the administrative tasks are the challenges, because now that we can make and you all can order in quantities of one, or you can make in quantities of one if you bring it in-house, it becomes, how can I profitably decorate that piece and see it all the way from order acquisition to ship out the door, right? And there's a ton of administration in that if I'm having to go and log on to this website and order this thing for one piece and it's a unique logo, or I'm having to go and order this garment from this blank apparel wholesaler in its unique SKU. And so, jumping on to Deric's answer, it is technology is what's going to allow you to scale in heat transfers on demand. And I think that's really the space for heat transfers. Now, not that they can't solve a lot of issues at really high quantities for some of the 4-color process and hybrid technology, but screen printing is going to remain for the volume jobs, right? Heat transfer is going to occupy more share of shop than it used to in the past, but you can't get eaten alive with all the administrative tasks that come with fulfilling a quantity of one. So you got to find software and automation to solve that for you.
Okay. And can I jump on that? So to jump on that too, when you say administration, I want to double click on artwork, right? Like back in the day, you could pay a separator, hundreds of dollars to separate a file because you're going to screen print, and you can amortize that across the biggest cost that you have oftentimes now is processing the art, right? Like, so your cost of goods profile has changed dramatically in a world where you're doing a quantity of one. You got to be conscious that, like, getting that order and getting the art processed and that handled, you can't spend a lot of time there because all that time is being divided by one, not by 500, right? So you got to get really efficient at that processing point.
Mike, where's the sweet spot when it comes to, like, deciding, obviously there's minimums associated with different items and products, but how do they define where their sweet spot is when it comes to what method they should be using inside their shops? How do they know if they're losing time and wasting money?
Well, it does depend on what equipment they've got, obviously. But it's kind of interesting, right? Like, talking about that one unit and the expense in that one unit with the art and all that sort of thing. Fulfillment works when it's one unit and you might have the opportunity to sell it 20 times or 30 times, because the 30th time you sell it, you're okay. You're breaking even for the administrative time that you've put in the front. And that's one of the challenges that shops have got today, because we've got all this wonderful technology that enables us to sell one unit. It doesn't often make total sense to sell one unit from a business point of view, and that is one of the trickiest things to balance. I mean, you can embroider one unit. I had a story from a dude named Ron yesterday. He sold a Carhartt jacket to a venture capitalist guy from New York for $540 last week, and he was very, very proud of that. And the reality is, if you look at the time that it took him to buy the jacket in, do the digitizing, all that sort of thing, he had to charge that much money. And so it comes down to what your customer profile looks like. If you're doing one and it's on a fulfillment, you're either doing a favor for somebody, right? Or you're probably going to struggle doing one for very much longer.
Indeed. So I know that obviously heat transfer goes outside of just the DTF now, which was the craze, and then the screen printed transfers. What is coming down the pipeline that people should be focused on? I know two of you guys bought some samples this show. Is there? You want to start, or you want Josh to start? Oh man, you picked a hard act to follow.
No. Jody's going to trump me. I know. So I think that we're seeing growth in dimensional still. So either super soft or super thick, and really nothing in between is what we're seeing as far as like demand goes. And so continuing to see growth in products like PVC patches is definitely a category. And I'll start some samples around here if somebody can hook me up. And then it's not only in the patch products with the transfer you can create and heat apply. Again, it's back to the equipment, because most people think, oh, that's not going to last, I need to stitch that, right? And while that used to be the case, there are transfers on the market today, and there's heat press technology on the market today where that patch can last and be heat applied only and not require any stitching. And so categories of PVC, categories of, I have to call it hook and loop, right? But you know what the big brand is with hook and loop, right? And so interchangeable messaging and collaboration with being able to not only just for tactical, but for collaborations, activations, holographic designs where it's dual image. So I'll pass some of that stuff around, but we're seeing a lot more in just the creativity that you can do in the dimensional product for sure.
Total collaboration.
I was great. Check this out. We got suppliers helping suppliers on stage right now. This is a rare event.
So when Josh talks about a quantity of one in DTF, this is the perfect example for me. We're not necessarily talking about a one-off. We're just selling one. We're talking we could do variable data, meaning each garment has a different name, a different number. It's one job that you're sending out to get done. Easier than vinyl in this case, because you're not having to weed all of that, and you're getting a full color, limitless, opportunity there. Multiple print locations. Something that you can't really achieve with any other print is split front. So when we say solves problems, when we say quantity of one, this is kind of embodies all of that here. Dimensional is still huge for people right now. Puff, and then you combine it with a flat ink to make it really pop off the shirt. Vintagey, like no hand feel. People would be surprised what you can achieve with screen printed heat transfers. Very popular right now. I will say something that's gaining huge popularity. The 90s are back right now. I don't know if you've noticed. So all the shimmers and the glitters and the rhinestones and all that stuff. So you could achieve special effects with your screen printed heat transfers. And then again, difficult prints. This is a reversible jersey with multiple print locations and variable data.
Is there any advice one of you can give when it comes to like price and transfer work? I think one of the biggest things that people struggle with is, well, obviously we know DTF comes in at the higher cost margin, especially when they're not properly using it. They're trying to use it for one colors and like simpler prints. But is there any advice or things that you can see that where people can improve when it comes to pricing? Anybody?
Keep it simple. I think that would be keep it simple and then simplify it further. So of course you have to have an understanding of your costs. So it's very common that you'll hear about the direct cost of materials when you're looking at an equipment investment anywhere on this floor. But what you probably won't hear about is the labor cost. And often, like even I think when you look at DTF, labor is the majority of the cost calculation in my mind, because overhead's pretty low to have your own printer. Cost of materials, while it may seem high, it's pretty low. Labor is the main component, and also downtime. And so just making sure you have the labor costs incorporated, and then all those indirect costs that go into customer acquisition, and you're calculating overhead. But after that, when you're setting pricing, I'm not a big fan of the keystone method where I'm just going to double my cost, because I think that either leaves money on the table and I'm selling myself short, or sometimes it puts me out of the market for a high-end jacket as an example, and I'd be perfectly happy making $100 profit on a high-end varsity jacket instead of having to keystone it and be priced out of the market.
When I did pricing like that in my shop, you always separate out your press cost from your transfer cost. And you work out what your press cost is based on the people, the machinery you're running, how many they do an hour, and then you work out what margin you want to make on that, and then you add that back to whatever margin that you're making on the transfer that you're buying in. And it's keeping it simple, but it's making sure that you've covered your labor component, because the most expensive thing in this, like Josh said, is the labor component.
Where are you seeing shops now with all of these printers in every booth now, and some shops are deciding to bring it in-house? Where do you see guys firing you and bringing it in-house? Or what goes into that decision-making? I know he said they don't think about the labor that goes into it. They're looking at the cost per square inch, which is very, very cheap. But what are what is going into some of the decisions that they're making and deciding to bring it back in house? How are they making that decision?
I can tell you how they shouldn't be making it, if that's fair enough.
It works.
Yeah.
You start there.
Yeah. So I think a couple of the things that often people miss is the innovation curve, right? And so if you're going to jump in this early in the technology, you better be prepared not only to learn quick and have that technical experience, but to invest at a high frequency to stay relevant in the market. Because I can tell you, credit to all the machine manufacturers, this technology is moving and it's moving fast. And so there's a high cost to staying on top of it, and it's not for every shop, for sure.
Yeah, I would say that this is a creative group, right? Most of us have a creative bend to us. Math, wasn't really a priority in a lot of cases. So sometimes we don't really do an ROI calculation on this investment. We do an emotional, like, oh, I want the ability to make one on demand. And well, if that's not your business model, that's a mistake for you to make, right? And if you don't have product market fit, right? Like most startup businesses fail, they do. So my advice would be start as cheap as you possibly can and get a heat press. You can find somebody that can print for you. If it does make sense for your business to bring that in-house, great. And to Josh's point about the need to continue to invest, every DTF machine on the floor today will be obsolete in 12 months. So be ready to buy another one, and be ready to buy another one, and be ready to buy another one if you're going to go down that road. Like that's where we're heading.
To those.
It also comes down to what your focus is. It's what you want to do in your shop. Are you a maker? And makers are always going to want to make in some way, shape or form, unless they're old and burnt out like me and they never want to make again. But ultimately, one of the things that I suppose I missed in that shop all of those years is I never put enough focus on the sales side of things, and I only had 60 or 70 or 80 hours a week to work, and I didn't spend enough of it selling. And so it also, that decision comes down to where your focus is on your business, what stage your business is at, whether you've got enough work, whether you haven't got enough work, whether you're now eating costs, or whether you want to add value to the next thing. It's not a simple, it's such a personal decision.
I think a lot of people today are, like I've been talking and have a lot of conversation and focus on what they can make as far as what equipment they have and what they can produce, but it means nothing if you can't sell it to somebody at the end of the day.
Got to be a customer.
They pile up on the equipment and different things like that. We can open it up to any questions in the audience. Any questions? Just raise your hand and she'll come by with a mic.
Hi, when do you think DTF will get gradients right? Because I know gradients is probably one of the things you can't print onto shirts, and people would rather go the DTG route. But will the machines and the equipment get better? Will you get gradients right?
It's a really good question. And the most difficult thing with the hybrids and the DTF transfers is you have to have a piece of glue behind the print. And sometimes that glue sticks out and it looks terrible when it's a gradient. And sometimes you can choke it in and then chances are it's not going to wash that well. And so that's the conundrum and probably the biggest limitation of this technology. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's probably not, right, as my guess. I don't know that we get there anytime soon, but I think that's the point that several of us made, right? It's not the only tool for that job. If you need to have a feathered soft edge where you want that band t-shirt, right, where it looks like it's fading out, you probably still need to screen print that, right? Yeah, looks like Rick was waiting.
So I actually have two questions. One is, I've heard that there's like 30 different adhesives, so are we going to see an explosion of that at some point? Like, where are there different adhesives for different garments? And the other is, part of all the creative stuff that you've been able to do has to do with the machinery that you can heat from the bottom, et cetera. And do you see any developments happening in that will allow you to give us even more options than transfers?
Anybody? Transfer types?
I'll take the machinery question if that's cool. Okay. So I think on the machinery side, what we saw, it's probably been 3 or 4 years ago, was the start of bottom heat. And we've seen that continue to progress and solve more challenges on heat-sensitive garments and also thicker transfers. So it's very helpful there. I also think we've seen more growth in air-operated equipment than in the past because heat pressing is becoming a lot of somebody's day. and staffing isn't as easy as it used to be. And so you want your heat press operator to be comfortable and as fresh as they can be at the end of the shift for productivity and quality from that standpoint. And then I'd say one of the big things that we're seeing is like simplifying the placement of the transfer itself to garment. So being able to load the garment faster and more accurate, and then simplifying the placement. We've had laser technology that's been handling that. Now we're moving into the age of projection, where we're actually going to project the image directly onto the shirt and just match the logo to the light. And so anybody can learn a heat press and start heat pressing any of the transfers in a matter of probably an hour.
Just one thing. Sorry.
I wanted to speak to the powder, the adhesive question you had. There are multiple adhesives that you can use for transfers. DTF uses one of them. So you can't solve all the problems with adhesive backers, but you can solve some of those problems. I haven't personally seen anybody selling anything besides TPU powders, right? Because you want that soft hand, low temperature application, and that TPU is a necessity for that. I think you will see some changes as larger companies like ourselves get involved and into DTF and actually embrace the DTF technology. Sorry.
Just mine was on the machinery question. High volume heat presses, carousel heat presses, machines that are faster, you need more people on them. But like the faster the press goes and the better that goes, then the higher the volume goes. But there's lots. There's 3, 4, 5 machines here that are all sort of like focused on speed.
But again, you'd circle back to your labor costs. If it takes 2 people to run a carousel that's putting out $400 an hour, but it only takes 1 person to operate a dual shuttle that puts out $300 an hour, make sure you're looking at the full scope.
Yeah, I think there's value to both manufacturing methods, whether it's a carousel or dual. Look at your footprint, look at your space, look at your labor component and how you want to staff your machines and the flexibility you need, and they're both going to be market fits. But the point is faster, right?
Everybody needs a dual fusion.
Thank you, I appreciate
That's a big
that.
endorsement. Probably took a lot. So, any more questions?
Yeah, I have one. I was just wondering, because maybe you guys are more tied in to this part of our business, do you know if the big manufacturers are starting to prepare their products more so that they're safer for heat transfers? Like, are you seeing a shift?
Garments?
Yeah, in the garments.
No.
They're sending them products and making them make it work for their
I don't understand how that's not possible.
That's where the transfer types come in. I know you working on something new as well.
I say no. One of the toughest things about being a contract decorator was you never knew what the garment was, or you never knew what the fabric was. You didn't know whether it was going to bleed. Like a lot of people buy our blocker transfers because they're just scared that it's going to bleed. And it's about insurance. But unless you know what the history of that fabric is and where it came from and all that sort of thing, some manufacturers do it better than others. But the reality is it's an impossibility. You got to buy the best transfer you can to make sure that you got the right finish.
I mean, there's some polyester out there that just won't scorch, and then there's other ones that will scorch at 240 or 225 or whatever. There's got to be a way to fix that problem, and I don't understand why no one's trying to at least advertise, hey, look, we've created heat transfer safe, I don't know.
That's a great question.
I feel like you asking me a question in reverse.
Yeah.
It's the wrong audience.
Essentially, customers will come to us and say, "Oh man, your transfer bled. My transfer didn't bleed. Your garment bled into my transfer." But that said, there's solutions for that, and it's not a DTF solution, but there's carbon blocker solutions that you can use for that, and then there's non-carbon blocker solutions. We actually have a newer product we'll be launching soon that solves exactly that problem for dye sublimated garments. And there's other. And again, carbon is the current way that that's done, but if people want to be carbon free, I've got a carbon free product that does that and blocks, and it gives you the confidence to press on whatever you would like at low temperature. You mentioned 240. 240, you got to melt the adhesive, so it's still a transfer. But 285 is probably the acceptable area where you can be at. So sourcing from the best brands that you can sourcing from the best decorators. If you're talking about dye sublimated decorators, making sure you do your research, that you partner with them and say, hey, send me some samples. No matter how small you are, big companies, they'll usually send you free samples to test on. Get those samples, test on them, wash them at home, wear them yourself. I've got a puff product that, puff is traditionally a product that, it's not meant to last long. It looks beautiful, it puffs up. I think that's the fix. It puffs up. We've got a guy came by our booth the other day. He said, oh, I work out in this puff transfer shirt that you pressed for me last year, 365. I'm sure he skipped a couple days, but he said he washed it every single day and it held up and beautifully. And he's like, I'm your proof right here. I'll send you a picture of it. He did his homework, and now he buys a bunch of puff transfers from me because he solidified it. That's a product that works for me. And it's the same thing with it's going to be a bleeding product or any other product. Talk to your suppliers and demand what you want. You're in charge of what your suppliers bring you, right? And your dollar is going to show, hey, that's the product I'm buying because it's non-problematic, right?
When you shop,
Hazel, give him a sample.
Wait. We got to hear that. Say that again. Say that for everybody else.
That's a good one.
I said I'll call Nike on Monday.
So can I say how I think we can solve it? Because I do think there's a solution. I think the industry suppliers are more tuned into heat transfer, right? Look at the activations happening around the show. Everyone's taking notice of heat transfer, but I still think it's a technology solve. When you go to buy a product on nearly any marketplace, what do you do first? You read the peer reviews, right? And so I think as more shops are running common shop management software and experiencing issues with blanks, there'll be a system where basically you can look at a piece of garment across the whole supply network and be able to predict whether it's safe for heat transfer, whether it has a tendency to bleed, and have a way to aggregate that information across the marketplace to have more confidence.
I think at the end of the day, we gotta choose the right products. It's on us at the end of the day. It's so many options, so many different blanks. We gotta live inside the ones that we're comfortable with, and then kind of branch outside of that whenever the need fits it. But slowly, every once in a while, I just go through the supplier to see what they have, because new things popping up all the time. But we definitely have to tune in to where we're more educated on those blanks as well. What are the things that people don't consider that they probably should use as signs not to buy DTF?
Yeah, you've got to exhaust glycol, which we're not talking about that much on the floor, but you've got to do that, right? So you got to penetrate a roof, you got to penetrate a wall, you've got to get that, out of the shop. You've got powder in the air, right? You've got that dust, you've got to control that contaminant. You've got to control humidity, right? Well, so where are you located, and what's the winter, what's the summer? Like, you need 50% humidity in that room. You got to control that while you're still exhausting, so that there's a fight that you're fighting there. And you got to be prepared to learn that machine inside and out. And I mean inside and out. You're going to be replacing print heads. You're going to be replacing every critical component of that machine. If you're running it consistently, you replaced everything on it in 12 months, because we all have.
Yeah, safety and compliance is the biggest one, right? So it's not just potentially a safety issue if it's not done well. If you don't know your components coming in and really trust that these are accurate SDS sheets coming in and what's in the materials that you're having yourself or your employees use in your shop. And I think there's some environmental things that are related to that as well. So just make sure you know your materials, that you've done the work, that you have proper documentation, because this is a process where you run it in a tight space because it needs to be controlled, temperature and humidity, and all of a sudden we have different things in the air because we're curing and drying, and we have powders, and so you just need to really know your components. And right now it's kind of the Wild West on new components coming in every day, and I don't know why you guys buy them off of Alibaba or whatever. Like, come on, it ain't worth all that.
Any more questions? All right, any closing remarks going down the line? Start with Josh.
All right, so I think what I would say is there's a ton of growth in heat transfer. Of course, that's why we're all here and we're all talking about it, and we're all excited to be on the stage together. I do think that it's an assorted product in the toolbox, but my closing remark is form a business plan and a strategy. The worst thing about heat transfer is the cost to entry. Not that it's expensive, it's that it's so inexpensive that we have this issue where a lot of shops will come in without a business plan, without an understanding of their target markets, and just basically like, hey, I'm going to buy this equipment, and if I buy it, the customers will come. Take the proper time to plan before you invest. It is a nice lean model, an agile model, but there's no replacement for knowing your market and doing proper planning.
I would say choose your partners wisely. So if you're going to purchase transfers, know the quality you're getting. Get sample packs. You're on the floor today. All of us and even some smaller competitors have sample packs. Take them home, press them, and partner with somebody that's going to give you the customer service that you need, the support, who's going to answer the phone when you call, who's going to troubleshoot and go the extra mile for you. That will be a key part of your success. You don't want to partner with somebody who's just started and is learning themselves and they're making DTF, but geographically they might make the most sense, but they might not make the most sense from a knowledge base or from a customer service standpoint.
Yeah, echoing these guys, I think 24 is going to be a transformative year for our industry. I know we're investing in technology. I hear rumors about what you guys are doing in technology, so I know that we're all spending big on this, right? To Josh's earlier statement, you're all in, right? Like, yeah, we're all leveraged and going after this full force. So I see it being a transformative year. I see, Josh's advice too about, don't join the technology war. Join the, how do I get customers? What's my business model? Get really, really good at that. And the options are going to be available to you, right? You're going to be able to find a good supplier. You're going to be able to bring this in-house. Once you have the need, man, that's when you want to bring something in-house, right? When there's a huge, margin advantage to bringing it in-house, that's when you want to do it. When you know the savings is going to be real. Don't, buy it and hope they come. Go get the customers and then build the business.
Sort of echoing what they all said, invest in the knowledge base behind the products. Trust the process, trust your suppliers, build that relationship. The more you invest in your relationship with your suppliers, the better your outcome will be. Choose your suppliers very carefully. Choose the suppliers that have the products that your customers need, and you'll do great.
You guys are a hard act to follow, because I don't really know what to close with apart from everything that they said, and you guys should buy Supercolor.
All right, guys, give us a round of applause.